Hey everybody, as we're working on our Shakespeare essay, wanted to go over some of the rhetorical devices with you in order just to help you compose your essay. So there are so many, there are hundreds, as I said in the notes, and we're not going to focus on more than roughly 24, a little less. But I'm going to streamline the process for you right here. And let's just start with a background. So part of your essay is to argue who uses rhetorical devices better, Antony or Brutus. It doesn't have to be your entire essay, but it is something I want you to focus on for at least a paragraph. Now, the overall question is, who is a better speaker? And you can answer either way, Antony or Brutus, and you're going to defend it using claims. So at least once in your essay, you'll say that Brutus is a better speaker or Antony is a better speaker, whatever your thesis is, because he uses rhetorical devices better than his opponent. Now, understanding these rhetorical devices can be very difficult. Even spelling them and pronouncing them can be very difficult. We're not going to worry about the spelling or the pronunciation. We just want to understand the concepts about how they're used and why they make an argument more convincing. So in the list that I gave you in the modules, I kind of broke them down into some rhetorical devices are used to ask questions in an effective way. Some are used to state and refute counter-arguments. Some are used to build emotion. Some are used for parallel structure. And that just means that you're weighing a sentence in a certain way that the message comes across clearly to the reader or to the listener in this case. So let's just go with a brief list here, starting with number one that you see. I'm going to just highlight a few of these for you, and hopefully you can just apply to your writing. So a rhetorical question is called an erotema, and it is an overarching kind of term, right? It just means any kind of rhetorical question. Now, a rhetorical question has an answer implied, but it can be broken down into further parts. And one of those is epiplexis, right? Another is called ratiocinatio. But let's start back with erotema. In the beginning of the speech selection you have in Act 3, Scene 2, Brutus asks, "Had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves than that Caesar were dead to live all free men?" So, you think the audience in its mind is going, well, of course not. Right? It's a rhetorical question, right? But there's so many things going on in this rhetorical question, and we'll look at something else later in this little video. So, an epiplexis is a kind of rhetorical question, right? It has a specific purpose, in other words. And when you use a rhetorical question to chide your opponent or express grief, then you have an epiplexis. And Antony does this. He repeatedly asked later in the speech, well, Caesar did this. Was this ambitious? I mean, he helped the poor. Was this ambitious? He celebrated with us the Lupercal. Was this ambitious? And he's doing a lot with that too. But he's using it really to chide Brutus because he's saying, no, Brutus, you're the ambitious one. You want to take the throne here, right? Okay, so let me just make a point here that wasn't Antony, that wasn't Caesar, that was you. And then something else, another kind of rhetorical question is called ratiocinatio, and really it's kind of a series of questions that are listed together that have the purpose of you reasoning aloud. So you are kind of considering questions people might ask about a particular process, and you process them aloud and you answer them. Well, what should be done about our immigration policy? Well, this should be done about our immigration policy. What should be done about, institutional effectiveness? This should be done about institutional effectiveness. And if you use that structure of asking and answering questions, it's called a ratiocinatio. Okay, so those are three, right, ways to use questions in argument. Counter-arguments, there, again, are dozens of devices that are used to kind of state the opposition's position and then deny it or refute it or prove why yours is stronger. So I'm just going to point out two that stick out really big here in this Act 3, Scene 2. One is called dikalogia, And this is when somebody makes an accusation against you and you deny that accusation by saying it was necessary. And actually, it's the erodema that happens before it has that function. Had you rather Caesar were living and die all slaves than that Caesar were dead and live free men? So he's basically saying, look, I had to kill him. Okay, it was necessary. If I didn't, he was going to be the emperor and he was going to use us all as his slaves. And then the anticategoria, okay, is when you turn an accusation against the accuser. So you're being accused of being ambitious, and that's what's going on with Antony here. He does want the throne, but saying that at this time is not appropriate, and he certainly wouldn't have killed his friend for it. So Antony says, oh, I'm not the ambitious one, right? Was this ambitious? That's you, Brutus, right? That's not me. So to say Caesar was ambitious, or to say that I was ambitious, no, you're the ambitious one. You want to be the king, if you will, and that's why you killed him. All right, now this essay also really focuses on pathos. It's just another term, a synonym for emotion, right? In an argument, logic is probably the most important thing, the logos everywhere, but man, you can win arguments in ways that are surprising by using emotional words or emotional messages, or just the way that you present the argument with heavy emotion. If you can work on the reader's heart, if you will, it's really effective sometimes. And here I'll just name two that are used. We have the aposiopesis, and that's to break down with emotion. And Antony does this. I mean, his dear friend Caesar has been murdered, and he's speaking in front of this big assembly, and they want to know how he's going to react. Is he going to be like, oh, well, he's dead, now I get to be king or emperor or whatever? And no, man. He breaks down. He's like, my friend's gone, and I can't speak right now, right? And so by doing this, he shows his vulnerability, and everybody goes, he's the right guy. He understands it. He gets our suffering, and he can manage it. And this is great, right? So, I mean, he builds himself up with this, and he taps into the audience with this at the same time. And then also something that's used to establish pathos is the conduplicatio, and really that's just a repetition of words. It could be a word or words, and Antony continually says honorable when referring to Brutus, and eventually the audience starts to think, oh my God, why did he say that? Oh, I see, it's ironic. He's not honorable, he's a murderer. Or ambitious, as I mentioned before, or Brutus becomes brutish, right? You got that play on words there. He will actually use Brutus at the beginning of a couple of lines successfully, and you start to get the idea that this repetition, this conduplicatio, is to just get under the audience's skin, if you will. Maybe not in any angry kind of motivation, but just to let them feel the fact that this guy, Brutus, is brutish, that he's a monster for killing stabbing his best friend in the back, right? So by repeating these things over and over again, it just kind of leaves the reader with the sense of, okay, this is set in now. I know what you're after. And finally, parallelism. There are different ways to achieve this, but the idea of parallelism is the weight of the message, and it just helps the reader to remember it. We have isokalon first, and that's just a repetition of words or phrases with the same structure or weight. And at that first example at the top, when I talked about erodema, Brutus goes through that, why did I have to kill him? As this was true, then this was true. As this was true, then this is true. As this was true, this was true. So that repetition of that structure there is called isokalon. And it could be done with 3 words, like veni, vidi, vinci, I came, I saw, I conquered, as long as it has the same weight in grammar. And then anaphora is just simply a repetition of initial words or phrases. This is more of a poetic device, but it is used here with and Brutus, yet Brutus, but Brutus by Antony. And then finally, antistrophe, a repetition of a phrase or clause in reverse order. So you take the words, you state them in one order, and then you reverse it, right? Is it true that I love Caesar more, or that I love Rome more, or then, no, but I love Rome more than Caesar, right? So things are just inverted in the message, and it's just a way to remember it, really. but it presents good structure for writing. So hopefully those will help, and you'll get a sense of what's going on with these two master speakers here. The idea is just to defend your argument, okay, at least part of it, by looking at rhetorical devices. So you might look at who you think uses them better. And there's no right answer, guys. It's just the way you defend your argument, as always. So I am here for questions. Remember to reach out to me at any time. I'm here every day during the week on office hours. So I look forward to speaking with you. And for now, have a good day.